The events that led to the Haunted Palace were a little bit strange. I had done a number of Edgar Allan Poe pictures for American International, and they wanted me to make another. I suggested, since I had done so many Poes, that Lovecraft was a similar writer, and that I might do a Lovecraft story.
Where is she?
Who?
You know who, the Fitch girl. Do you deny she's here?
Certainly not. She visits us frequently. Don't you, Miss Fitch? Don't you?
And American International agreed at that time. I emphasize at that time.
Ovos felices.
I think they had planned to turn a Lovecraft story into a Poe story all along. And they were letting me have a little bit of freedom, move from Poe to Lovecraft. The periods were about the same, and it looked a little bit like a Poe picture.
Here you are. Careful. Oh, thank you, Mr. Carmody. It was a most enjoyable trip.
I was filming it under the title, as I recall, The Case of Charles Dexter Ward, which was the original title of the Lovecraft short story.
Do you believe me now, Michael Smith? Now that you've seen with your own eyes, do you believe me when I tell you that's the home of Satan himself?
Aye, aye.
Then come.
The script was written by Chuck Beaumont, who had worked with me on several pictures previously. We discussed how to adapt The Case of Charles Dexter Ward. And what we chose to do was to bring in some elements from other Lovecraft stories to give it more depth.
All of you and your children and your children's children shall have just cause to regret the actions of this night. For from this night onward, you shall bear my curse.
Burn the devil. Burn him.
After Chuck wrote the script, and it was a good script, he went on to work, I think, for Twilight Zone, and I wanted a few more changes, so my ace assistant, Francis Ford Coppola, came in, and as with all my assistants, he was expected to do everything. He did a dialogue polish on the picture. He was there helping the actors go over their lines and prepare for the shooting. I envisioned, and I think I got, a slightly different look for Lovecraft than I had used for Poe. I used a lot of very subtle lighting techniques for the Poe pictures. I used basically the same techniques for Charles Dexter Ward and the same cameraman, Floyd Crosby, but I used a somewhat starker lighting pattern because I felt that that was intrinsically the difference between Lovecraft and Poe, and we should have a slightly more realistic, starker look, more straightforward than Poe. Vincent Price was a brilliant actor. And as with all true artists, whatever the subject matter, he took it very, very seriously.
Wait. That doesn't lead anywhere. This way.
How would you know that?
Oh, just a guess.
Vincent and I would discuss in depth the character before each picture. Our technique, which seemed to work to us, was to discuss carefully all aspects of the character before shooting, because all of the Poe pictures and the Lovecraft picture were shot on 15-day shooting schedules. And in 15 days, to shoot what were fairly complicated films, there was no time to have deep discussions about character. We had to go and shoot. So the discussions about the character were done before the shooting, which is the way I think it should be done.
Dear, something wrong?
Oh, no. No.
I think the concept of Vincent playing the dual role of Ward and Ward possessed was a challenge, but it's the kind of challenge an actor loves. It gives him an opportunity to work in a more complex way on camera. I think as possessed, he went back a little bit more to slightly the Poe-type role, whereas Ward was a little bit more straightforward.
Dear, what are you doing down here?
I don't know, Anne. I must have walked in my sleep.
Please, dear, let's leave here now tonight.
I want to, Anne, but I can't.
Lon Chaney was always our first choice. Somebody had suggested Karloff, but I knew Boris, and I felt that he really was a different type than what was required for the role, and Lon Chaney was closer, and Lon Chaney had at least something of a name to put in the advertising next to Vincent.
Mrs. Ward, I heard sounds. Thought we had prowlers.
This was the first time I worked with Lon, and it was a delightful experience. He was very unpretentious. He wanted to discuss the character once he knew it. He stepped onto the set, and he did it very, very well.
I'm sorry, Mrs. Ward, if I startled you, but I didn't know you'd be here so soon.
Well, just a minute. How is it you expected us at all?
Why, your attorney, Mr. Hutchinson, contacted me. Since then, I've been preparing the palace for your arrival.
He was a good actor, and for a big, powerful brute, he was a very friendly man, which I appreciated. Ronnie Stein did a number of scores for me at the time, including most of the Poe pictures. The Haunted Palace was one of his best scores. Some people have said it's his best. Ted Kudley was the makeup man. He had worked on most of the Poe pictures and a number of other films with me. I had total faith in him. He was very, very good, and he had that unique ability to move rapidly for a low-budget film, but also to do exceptionally good makeup, and he excelled when we went into some of the fantasy sequences and the strange mutant makeup. We got, I think, for a low-budget 15-day picture, a fairly big look. This was with the aid of Danny Haller, our art director. There was a street of a town, and Danny built that in perspective. And we laid a little fog because it was a seaport, along the street. So the combination of the mistiness of the fog and the forced perspective, and I deliberately used wide-angle lenses, which do give you more depth, made the street and the town much bigger than it was, because it was really just built on one set. I was not envisioning a Lovecraft series of films. I thought I would probably go back to Poe, but I just wanted to break the cycle, as it were, with one picture.
They're finished.
No!
My feelings were very good about the film. I liked the film. It got good reviews.
Are you all right?
Charles, are you sure you're all right?
Perfectly sure, my dear. Perfectly sure.
And with all of that series, they really did, all of them, they were very successful commercially.